Is there a Rogue 10 in the original like Rogue Squadron was the speeder squad?
Yep. In Empire Strikes Back, General Riecken gives the order to send Rogue 10 and 11 to Station 3-8.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
Where did you dig up that old fossil?
Going to Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
That's no move.
We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
Well, welcome to the Star Wars News Podcast. I'm Dan Vedevanker.
And I'm Kenton Larson.
Very excited today to have, for the second time on the podcast, Lucasfilm creative executive Pablo Hidalgo. Pablo, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a thrill to have you on again. We love it when you visit us on the podcast.
Well, once every few years.
That's right. Yeah, well, it's just like the old Star Wars, right? Once every 3 years.
That's really plenty.
We'll just keep that going. So you'll be back in 3 years for the return of Pablo.
And this year you're here for DanQuest, as we call it,
That's
but
right.
FanQuest is what everyone else calls it. And we're getting you at the very end of a weekend of sitting at a booth, signing solo books, and doing a couple presentations. I saw the solo presentation, and it was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
But maybe we're strategically doing this because you're tired.
I'm exhausted. My guard is down.
His guard's down. So the timing couldn't be better.
Sure.
Absolutely. How has the weekend been for you?
Oh, it's been great. This is my first FanQuest, and I love the smaller homegrown shows. I mean, I've done both extremes. I've gone to San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, which are enormous shows, but they're almost too big, and you kind of lose sight of what this means to individuals and communities, and you just get a stronger sense of creativity at a show like this, and it's been really great to see the evolution in Winnipeg, because I mentioned this a couple of times over the weekend. 20 years ago, more, I hate to say, when you would go to a comic book show in Winnipeg, it would just be a bunch of guys hauling their old long boxes out of storage and selling to each other. There was no outlet of creativity. It was collectors selling to collectors. But now that's completely changed. Here you come to see people selling their own comics, their own stories, and their own creations, and that's really inspiring. It's great to see.
I saw today that you tweeted a picture of one of our local mercs, Mandalorian mercs, had a Sabine helmet.
Yes,
and you sent that photo to the actress who voices Sabine. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes.
This amazing young Mando named Emily. She showed me her helmet that she did of Sabine's helmet and her paint job, and I thought it was wonderful. And I thought, you know what? I want to send this to Tia Sircar. So I tweeted it to her, and Tia said, like, OMG, she loved it. And Freddie Prinze Jr. Chimed in with a damn.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Oh,
So I made sure to show Emily that as well.
I'm so jealous. What would I have to do to make him say damn?
You have to make a helmet and make
There you
something.
go.
No, we've
That's
got
right.
some great. We have, of course, have the 501st here in the local Mandalorian mercs, and they're having a great time. We I don't want to say use them, but they participated, voluntarily participated in our awards ceremony for you yesterday, where the college here, where we're at, Red River College, of which you are a graduate, gave you a Distinguished Graduate Award. And so we had those guys kind of parade in. And I wasn't sitting next to you, but Christine, our vice president, said you had to stand up.
Of course. Yeah.
That's right.
I had to. I mean, there's a pageantry in the room, right? And I wanted to show, like, support for that. So
Yeah.
it's like the color guard comes in. It's like, well, no, they are our flag when it comes to the Star Wars community, because they symbolize so much of what this means to people. So I just felt the need to show respect.
Yes, and everybody did, and it turned out to be a really good ceremony, and you said some very inspiring words during it. It really, I think, what I've seen over the weekend here is that obviously people love that you're from here, and you make it possible for them to do what they want to do. Like, that's really what it's all about, right? You want anybody can do what you do. Not anybody, but sorry, that came out wrong. What I'm trying to say is, if you want to pursue your fandom as a career, that's absolutely possible.
Yeah, it's, I've seen different attitudes over the years, and there's like a million reasons that you could invent not to do something, but you're just putting barriers in your way that you don't need to, And I've heard it many times said, like, it's, geography doesn't matter anymore. Winnipeg is no more far away from San Francisco than Los Angeles nowadays. There's distance should not be a barrier.
Oh, well said. And by the way, Dan, you gave Pablo, I believe it was you, a Winnipeg Jets jersey with an X-wing fighter with a jet. Where does somebody buy that?
Well, it's funny you should ask that.
Are they on sale?
Yeah, they are, but we're not apparently not allowed. Although Pablo, we're not.
You
allowed
gave him a copyright infringement sweater, is what you gave him.
Yeah, that's right. We're not selling them. Okay, here's what you do: you
I'm
donate.
not hearing a word. I'm not hearing a word.
No. You donate to Winnipeg Harvest, and in gratitude for your donation to Winnipeg Harvest, you receive a jersey.
Gotcha.
That's how that works.
That's pretty win-win in my book.
Exactly. Everybody wins. And so what it is, it's a design. Greg Visovich, I can't pronounce his last name, but he's been helping us out here this weekend, moderating panels and stuff. And he designed that logo and he put it together. And Pablo's been very nice about it because the Creecom and me, the minute I pulled that thing out of the bag, it's supposed to say Rogue One, obviously, because it's Rogue One. There was a typo.
Was it Rouge?
No, no, that would be worse. It says Rogue 10.
Oh.
So that's okay.
No, but honestly, I didn't think it was a mistake because I assumed it was Howard Chuck's number. I thought that's what you were doing. I thought you were giving me a Rogue X-Wing Jets jersey with Howard Chuck's number. I'm like, hey, that's great.
It worked out perfectly. Is there a Rogue 10 in the
works?
No. In the original, like Rogue Squadron was the speeder squadron.
Yep. In Empire Strikes Back, General Riken gives the order to send Rogue 10 and 11 to Station 38.
Wow.
So we know there's a Rogue 10.
There you go.
Oh, then maybe the jersey's just right.
It is. It is.
It's the deepest cut.
Yeah. And how about related to this? You met the mayor.
That's right.
What? Why did you meet the mayor? What happened?
It was a complete surprise. I got an email from the office. Well, actually, it came from Red River, but they were passing along the message from the offices of the mayor that he would like to meet with me.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's great. I was really happy to see those pictures, but I was like, what happened? What did he want?
I instantly looked him up because it should come as no surprises. I haven't been following Winnipeg politics all that closely, but I looked him up and I said, wow, he's a pretty young guy. He's almost, he's a little bit older than I am, just by a few years. And then at the end of his bio, I saw that he has a dog named Indiana. I'm like, wait a minute.
Is that true?
Yes, his dog's name is Indiana, so we might be dealing with a fan here. That's what I thought. So,
and he is an absolute Star Wars fan. I've seen him wearing Star Wars socks at events, and he is.
And I got a sense from him that he genuinely does care about Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and obviously he cares about the city. So it's like he just wanted to talk to me about what it was like to, make the journey from Winnipeg to Lucasfilm, and he's a really nice guy.
Did he press you for spoilers? Did he press you to tell him anything, or was he respectful of that?
No, he did not press me on anything. He did not offer up any sort of civic favors for me because there's not much,
Did he present you with anything? Did you get some?
I did get some gifts. I did get some lovely gifts. I got a nice Winnipeg fleece jacket, which actually fits really well in San Francisco weather, so that's nice. And I got a pair of socks that say, Winnipeg on it. So, and I will wear them proudly.
Oh, is that ever nice?
That's excellent.
Dan, sorry,
Since the last time you were here, Pablo, it's been 3 years. And a lot has happened in the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. You were here just like a month or two before The Force Awakens was released.
That's right.
Remember?
Yeah.
How has your life changed in those years? Think about back then, and what is it like now? Or was it always busy?
No, it's always busy. It's just now other people are talking about it, as opposed to it just being an internal thing. I can't believe how much has happened in that span of time. Because, when you think about it, that's 4 feature films and an animated series that ran for 4 seasons that we managed to take from beginning to end. That should be enough to retire on.
Okay, and that's more than they had out in the previous 20 years.
Yeah, and it's just going to keep on going. So it is such a steady pace that it's so easy to lose track of time. You just kind of look up, and next thing you know, 4 years have passed. Wow. But that's what keeps it exciting. That's what keeps it interesting. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of fantastic filmmakers and creative people that I would never have dreamed I'd have the ability to meet and talk to. And the other thing too is percolating in the background, and it's going to come next year, is the theme park edition, Star Wars Land. Galaxy's Edge is coming to both Orlando and Anaheim, and the idea that looking back over more than 4 years, that was just conversation at one point. And now there's a sense of permanence because there's actually steel and concrete that's going to come out of this, right?
Did that come up as soon as Disney bought Lucasfilm? People started thinking about that?
I think so. I think like it was the natural transition. It's like, oh, this has got to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're planning a trip to Disneyland this summer, and I'm just trying to convince people to let's just wait till next year. Although then we're gonna have to go back next year, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm very excited to see that, and that's really a whole other thing. You were consultant on this on the.
Yeah, I mean, there are as a whole team we consult, and a couple of other people in the story group take more of an active day-to-day role in it. But I was involved in some of the very early discussions, and I'm still continuing to be involved. And it's just fascinating to watch it come through because if ever there were disciplines that I never thought I would get a chance to witness in action, is the kind of ingenuity and just sheer genius that goes into building these attractions.
Oh, I was gonna quick follow up. Is Rogue 10 gonna be part of Disney World? Okay, all jokes aside, I was actually gonna ask you. Dan kind of went to a place that the very first thing that I wrote down when I thought about talking to you was pre-episode 7 to now. Is there anything that you now know about Star Wars, or what have you learned about Star Wars in the time in those years? In anything, take it however you want, in terms of fandom, in terms of the brand, in terms of your own knowledge. What's changed for you in that time?
It's all been so steady. It's hard to we're still in the thick of it, so it's hard to step back and say, "Oh, these are the lessons learned from this adventure." I do think we are still learning what it means to have Star Wars be an active part of everybody's life and the level that it is to this day, and whether certain people, what that means to folks who are so used to only getting it in dribs and drabs over the past 40 years, and what it means to a new generation for Star Wars to be their Star Wars, for seeing kids and other young people latch on to Sabine and Ezra and Kanan as their heroes. And I'm hoping that, the next animated content that is geared towards a younger audience will also create this new generation. So it's been absolutely amazing. What I do miss is we haven't had a celebration in a while, and we're having one in next year. So those tends to be the really good check-ins to get a sense of what the world is like in terms of the Star Wars fan world and what people are reacting to. So
And
that'll be fun.
I'm excited because it's close to us. It's
That's
in
right,
Chicago,
yeah.
so we're going.
Oh God,
We're going. There's no way.
I love Chicago without celebration. You put celebration there.
But
it's
I was
too much.
when they announced it, I told Kenton they're never going to get closer to us than Chicago. They're not going to do Minneapolis.
And then I said to Dan, "No, Dan, Pablo is from Winnipeg." That's what I said to him.
Right.
And that means that when would Winnipeg be on the list?
Well, what's funny is we now have venue spaces that could accompanying it, right? Because I've been seeing what's been happening in downtown and the revitalization of spaces and accompanying hotels. Those are like the big factors that go into selecting a place for a Star Wars event of that size. Is it affordable to get its audience into the hotel spaces required? And it's like, I do want to see a Canadian Star Wars celebration.
Yes.
That'd be great.
I think that would be amazing.
Like Toronto or Vancouver, Montreal, one of the bigger cities. That would be phenomenal.
Or even Winnipeg.
Or
I
even
mean,
Winnipeg.
I'm saying, you got to remember when the celebration started, it started in Denver and it started in Indianapolis. And a big factor in those placements was its accessibility to cities nearby, these sort of hub locations. So I wouldn't rule anything out.
I thought it was quite funny when we've been tweeting and you've been retweeting us and talking a little bit on Twitter about this event and FanQuest, and I remember seeing somebody tweet out, "Come out to the Midwest and do one of those things at Midwest." And I'm like, we are the Midwest. How can you get more mid than Winnipeg and West?
Gateway to the West.
Exactly. We're right in the middle. Heart of the continent is our new slogan. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they kind of define where they are and that kind of thing.
It's true. Like a celebration location announcement tends to draw out a lot of reaction, and the reaction is always, "Well, why isn't it in my backyard?"
Right.
But that's a good problem.
But now it is in our backyard, and we're happy. We're thrilled that it's in our backyard. So very excited about that for next year.
Yeah. And so when you just said you're always interested in what the fandom has to say when you go to these places, are you surprised by what people say to you generally? Like, I know you tweeted something about people ask you some really good questions.
Yeah.
For instance, do some of the questions surprise you in terms of make you think differently about things, or do they have any influence over how you perceive the Star Wars universe yourself?
Well, I think that the difference is that in person, you're able to have more of a conversation about something as opposed to throwing a question into the ether of the internet and hoping that it's read the right way and hoping the answer reads the right way. We've had this thing at FanQuest called Guest Quest where we've had broken up into smaller groups and just had, something like 20-minute conversations with small groups of fans, like 6 or 7 people. And it's been really good. Like, I really like it because it's a lot more back and forth and you're able to be a lot more thoughtful with your responses. And it's that kind of interaction that I think is it's sort of missing in your day-to-day fandom.
That was part of the idea behind that is just to kind of connect. The whole point of FanQuest is to create meaningful experiences for all who attend. That's kind of our mission statement. And we are hoping that Guest Quest does contribute to that. So I think I'm glad you liked it.
Is there a question that somebody asked you that stands out to you that you liked or found interesting?
Well, it's funny. Like, a question did come up about midichlorians, and I would never attempt to broach that subject online because people don't have the patience to listen to a long and involved answer theory. But it ended up being an interesting discussion about force sensitivity. What does it mean? What is the biology of force sensitivity? So. It's that kind of thing. It's like, hey, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Well, that's also particularly interesting given George Lucas saying that he had something in mind involving the micro universe of Star Wars.
Would go into that space, yeah.
Yeah. Would we ever see something like that? Would that?
Well, I can't comment on what may or may not happen.
He can't help it. He can't help asking these questions.
I forgot. Well, okay. But it's interesting to me that George Lucas had an idea. Like, I remember when you came here last time and you said George Lucas's idea for the prequels was different than what a lot of people thought Star Wars was. And what I found really interesting about him saying that was for the same reason.
Yeah.
I like that George Lucas has different ideas about what Star Wars is. To me, that as a fan, it's exciting.
I think the purest expression of that is his Clone Wars episodes that went into some very, very trippy spaces. And I'm a big advocate of, I like it when Star Wars gets weird.
It's really good. Yes, I agree.
Me too. There's always been room in Star Wars for musical numbers.
Yeah, for musical numbers or just weird visions in caves and stuff like that. I love all that.
Now, your main job, of course, is working with the story group, correct? But you also write the visual guides.
Yeah, so the visual, any publication that I do is honestly a side gig. It's kind of what I do in a freelance space.
Right.
And separate from my day-to-day job.
But you also did a thing on Rogue One where you were on the set and doing these kind of reports and being a kind of a on-set reporter kind of. It reminded me of Creecom. It really did. This is the stuff we do, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So and I love seeing that. I love seeing the Creecom in you come out in these things.
I did Rogue reports for Rogue, and I think they called it Behind the Scenes for Solo, which I did not name, but I think it's actually kind of funny. And again, would you say, is that part of my job? Well, not in any job description, but thankfully I don't have a job description, so I'm not boxed into anything I have to do or not do, right? In that case, it came about because we had a window to visit the set with a camera crew, and they thought rather than have to brief new on-air talent, I would be a better spokesperson for that because I already know all the players involved and where the story was going and what areas to focus on and not. So it is definitely a perk of my job that I was allowed to do that.
I'll refer back to the awards ceremony from yesterday, and you made a point, Pablo, of saying that you spell honor with an O-U-R.
Really?
Yes. Well, he doesn't. I've seen your writing, and you have to spell it the American way, I guess.
Yes.
In your work, but I love that you still think about that.
Of course.
Because I think about that. Every time I go to the U.S., I think about the way they spell center.
Center, R-E.
Yeah, it just drives me nuts. And it's so obvious to me that that's not right.
Yeah, and I was going to also offer you a compliment, which I don't know, maybe it's Canadian of you, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's just your personality. And that is, I like when you're on the Star Wars show and you're kind of the cantankerous one. Not cantankerous, but you know what I mean?
I'm the grouchy neighbor.
Well, it's like you show up. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example of someone who'd show up on Entertainment Tonight. You know what I mean? Entertainment Tonight, and someone comes on and they're like, no, I'm going to keep it real here.
There you go.
So I like that. I like how you keep it real on the Star Wars show. And that to me is a Creecom attribute, maybe?
I think it could be. And Rebels Recon, it's so funny. It's like people have latched on to some of the bits that we do. It's like, oh, that must be Pablo and Andy's working relationship. It's like, no, it's not. We're just goofing around every week in order to get that show done on time.
It's turned that I really enjoy that show actually, and it's certainly it's grown. I love the content you guys are producing around the production. Is that like something you had planned out from the beginning, or when this all came together, or is that just kind of someone came up with the idea and you said let's do it?
No, that just came about from our online group headed up by Mickey Capaferri and produced by Scott Bromley, and they realized that a weekly show is a source of great content, and our fan community does it as well. Why don't we do it as, why doesn't Lucasfilm do it, since we have access to the folks who actually make the show? So they endeavored to create Rebels Recon as a weekly companion, and they delivered.
Speaking of fan-generated content, this podcast is one of those. And when I look at our statistics for where people are listening from and that kind of stuff, I notice a very high concentration of listenership in and around the San Francisco area. Are there more Star Wars fans there than everywhere else because that's where it's made?
I don't know. I hadn't noticed that. We do have very much a strong presence there, and we have a very strong Rebel Legion and 501st presence. I think there might just be more podcast listenership in the Bay Area, just Silicon Valley
in general. Oh, okay.
And commuters,
Yes.
Oh, that's true.
But no, if you look at our stats, like almost 50% of our U.S. traffic comes from that area, which is. I just thought it was interesting. Like, well, maybe people just gravitate. It's like the Holy Grail. You gravitate towards where they all like sit in front of the Yoda statue and worship the.
I just thought it was Pablo downloading and then deleting it. Downloading and then deleting
It's you, isn't it? You're listening to our Pablo.
Yes.
Yeah. So Pablo, yesterday you did an incredible solo presentation, and we don't want to step on the great information in that presentation. Should you deliver it?
Sure.
At other places you go, but there was so much great stuff in that presentation. There's Easter eggs about what appears in Solo, and I love how hard you think about some of the fine little details. Like, it almost gives me shivers sometimes when you're like, there's a Canadian reference in there.
I don't mind giving that one up because the only place I would ever do that in a presentation is in a room full of Canadians, and so FanQuest has that, has that, and I'm not going to play that anywhere else. So.
I thought that was fantastic, and the room really liked that.
Of course, yeah. Anywhere else it would take way too long to explain, but I'll say it now, and whether or not you get it really depends on your Canadian education. But the lodge where Lando and Han first play the Sabacc game is Fort Ipso. That's where that spaceport is called, Fort Ipso. And I noticed, as part of the backstory, I decided that Vandor did have a fur trade, and I established that the name Fort Ipso comes from the old Ipso Bay Trading Company.
Oh, great.
Which is a reference to the Hudson's Bay Trading Company.
Which is way too long to explain to Americans why that's funny. But I'm only able to say that in a Winnipeg convention and without need of additional translation.
Yeah, we all loved it.
And if I can highlight one other little detail that was very popular, and we don't need to spoil anything here, but you have the best explanation for the Kessel Run.
Oh, yes.
That has ever been described. Now, I don't know. Do you not want to give that away?
I don't mind, because I once tweeted that image, but ages ago. But yeah, basically when we first started Solo pre-production, and people were scratching their heads as to what the Kessel Run is and how to visualize it, I basically did a screenshot of Frogger and replaced the frog with the Millennium Falcon moving from point A to point B, and emphasize that it's not about speed, or it's not solely about speed. Parsecs are a unit of distance, and the more adventurous traveler takes the largest and boldest leaps through traffic, whereas the more cautious traveler takes a much more stop and step approach to the Kessel Run, which is why they rack up the mileage. And sure enough, that made the explanation clear.
That's great. So he's bragging about distance.
Yes.
Not speed.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
But that was not the intent of the original line.
Well, that is arguable.
Okay.
Because a parsec is a unit of distance. It is. So you could argue that you could argue that Han is misusing that terminology, or there's much more to the Kessel Run than meets the eye.
Or that George Lucas didn't know what a parsec was and just like the word.
Also quite a possibility.
And that's kind of a part of what you do, is fill in the holes that are there. Obviously, when George is making these kind of things, he's not thinking of all the details. You do think of all the details, and you flesh it out and make it more real to people, I think. Is that accurate?
I think a case would be made that that's a good definition. I mean, a lot of it is just grabbing onto these little crumbs and wondering if there's room for exploration, and also wondering if how deeply you want to go into it, because you don't want to steal anybody's other storytelling opportunity. If someone had gone to the trouble of canonically defining the Kessel Run after the first Star Wars, they could have done it in a way that would have prevented Solo from being told, because you've just robbed that opportunity by over-explaining it outside the context of a story. So I like the fact that we're able to keep certain things hidden and reveal them in a way that really does them justice. So we have not seen a Kessel Run on screen until we got to Solo, and we're able to keep it full of surprises.
I love that scene.
Yeah,
It's
me
my
too.
favorite scene in the film. I love it.
Well, that is second to the shower scene. I was telling Pablo about that beer. I never thought I'd see that in a Star Wars film.
Neither did we.
No. You mean it was shot and then
It was shot in post.
Surprise.
It was shot as it was shot during pickups. It was shot as reshoots, like late in production, to basically bridge Mimban to Vandor. There was an early version of this moment in a script that had Chewie basically taking a bath in a mountain lake, which was never shot. So instead, the shower scene was written as a supplement. And for the longest time, you could have bet money as to whether or not it would have stayed in the movie, because there were some of us thinking, well, that doesn't need to be explained. You could just imagine that he must have taken a bath at some point. But they doubled down and said, no, let's put it in there. It'll get a laugh. And I'm happy to hear it got a laugh at your screening.
Oh, man. Absolutely. People loved it.
I was just so delighted by it, because that's something that hints at other possibilities.
Oh, totally.
And there's all and the joke is, but the joke lands
Yes, it
so
does.
solidly, and it could not have. Like, if there's any little thing could
Yeah.
have made it not land properly, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a testament to everyone's commitment to make that joke work, that it did work. So.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, I would say, just as a compliment to Solo in general, and I told you it's my favorite film of the new series. I like
great.
all of them, but that to me is the one that made me go, oh, I'm
Oh, that's great to
12
hear.
years old again, and oh my God, this is like, I'm right back into it. But the jokes, I think, are a big reason why. I love that sense of humor in that movie.
When kind of getting back to the fandom a little bit, when you guys made the decision to kind of, I don't want to say wipe the slate clean, because the extended universe as it was known, as far as I'm concerned, it was never canon. As far, like, I only thought of the films that were
Yeah,
made,
okay.
right? And that's kind of the idea behind why you guys did that.
Yeah, well, it didn't fit George's definition of what he viewed as his Star Wars
Yes.
universe. That said, I mean, he appreciated it as a source of idea and creativity, but a lot of people like to attribute that decision to treat the expanded universe as Legends. They like to attribute that to Disney, but in reality, that decision was made before the acquisition. That decision was made by Lucasfilm. The second Episode 7 was a possibility.
Okay, but you still can pull from those stories.
Oh, absolutely.
You made Thrawn.
Yeah,
You made
yeah.
Thrawn a real character, you know what I mean, and brought him to life on Rebels, and that was incredible. And so you have all this wealth. And the other one I remember was the series of tweets that Rian Johnson sent out when it was that book on the shelf. Do you remember that?
Yes, the Jedi Path. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and talking about you probably know what it was called, what Luke does at the end of The Last Jedi.
Basically that Force illusion trick that he pulls
Right,
off at the end.
and
yeah.
something that he did, and maybe it was you that pointed out he did it in Dark Empire as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
so there
did,
you go.
yeah.
So this stuff exists.
Yeah.
And you're pulling from it to create new stories.
Exactly.
So it's not gone and forgotten.
No, and if anything, it's almost like a first draft of history, and now we're finding out what the truth is behind certain matters, because we're able to give it the emphasis as needed and play it in a forum that hits a wider audience and are able to treat it in a certain way.
Does working for Star Wars affect your enjoyment of the movies, of the Star Wars movies?
No,
Can
not
you
at all.
still enjoy them?
Yeah, absolutely. And always because I have a proxy of some sort that is coming into it new, whether it be seeing a movie for the first time with my wife, who has not been privy to all the stuff that's going in, or just seeing a premiere audience see a Star Wars movie and see what they react to. So I'm able to sort of extrapolate what it would be like if I saw it for the first time. But keep in mind, like, I do get that first look. That first look just isn't as a finished film. That first look is as an idea on paper, or, a concept that's tossed up in a story meeting.
Or an animatic or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
so-
like you see it in all these different ways. When you go to the premiere, are you seeing the completed project for the first time?
That's usually where I see it with the finished sound mix and everything.
Okay.
So I will have seen iterations of it, but I don't get the finished version.
So you really are experiencing the film in its entirety
Yeah.
with everybody else. Speaking of premieres, I want to talk about the I love it. And this came up because I told wherever you went to do interviews this week for your appearance at FanQuest and the award, I told all the interviewers about his. Pablo's a great hockey fan. Is it you and Dave Filoni are the two big hockey fans in the office?
There are more, but
yeah?
we definitely talk about it, especially during playoffs.
Yeah. So of course we know the Winnipeg Jets had a great playoff run this year. They made it to the conference final. The city was abuzz and very excited during this. And during Game 7 against Nashville, it was the same night as a solo premiere.
Yeah.
And somebody shot a video of you outside on the red carpet, just watching the game on your phone.
That's right. Yeah, that was my buddy Ash Crossan. She writes for Entertainment Tonight, and yeah, she caught me watching the game.
But that just shows how much of again, you're a Winnipegger, right?
Yeah.
Any Winnipegger would have been doing that.
Well, because I was not gonna see the end of the game. I had to shut it off because we were going to watch the movie, so I had no idea how it was going to go. So any sort of edge or advantage the Jets had going into it put my mind at ease, and I would be able to concentrate on the movie.
And of course they won the series, but then they lost to Vegas in the next round. So
they won that night though. So when I was able to
Yes.
leave the movie, I was like, I turned my phone on instantly, just like, okay, what's the score? What's the score? So,
Yeah.
and of course,
Excellent.
Dave Filoni's the first person that I run into afterwards, because he was very supportive, because he knew that this was the best the Jets had ever done in this kind of playoff situation, and so he knows what that means.
and he's sorry. Well, who's his team?
The Penguins.
Pittsburgh. Okay.
Yeah.
And they did. Were they in the playoffs this year?
Briefly.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't following. I was only following Winnipeg. I wasn't following the rest of it.
No. But so like it's weird because he knows what it's like, and when they were out, he felt a sense of relief of not having to live on the edge like that.
Yes, it's both stressful and in a positive and negative way in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I asked you a question framed as a joke yesterday, but I think there was a good lesson for all Star Wars fans in your answer.
You can answer it again.
Well, no, I'm not going to ask it again. But what I'll say is I framed it as a question about Solo, which was really asking Pablo to weigh in on whether there's going to be an Obi-Wan or a Boba Fett movie. But you had a very good, I think sometimes, and maybe Star Wars podcasters might be the worst offenders here. So how do you respond to people who are trying to squeeze details?
Well, in general, like my attitude is like I'm happy to talk about stuff that's in the past, but when it comes to stuff that's coming out in the future, I really can't talk about it. I mean, and I think as all of us as being like Crecom students, folks in communications who have taken marketing and all that, we know that the release of this information is usually tied to campaigns and things and exclusives, and other news outlets are promised these sort of things. So it's not my place to talk about it, But once it's out in the world, hey, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
My thing is, why do you want to know about it? Wait for the movie to come out.
Because Pablo knows, and he's only here every 3 years.
Wait, no, but come on. Like I honestly, I mean, we have fun on this podcast speculating about possibilities and stuff, but we always preface it by saying, hey, this is just us having fun.
Yeah.
I totally get that, and were I not in the position I am right now, I'd love to join into speculation, but the problem is it's too easy to put too much importance on my words, or take a joke out of context.
You're like the Pope.
Well, I don't know about that.
Of Star Wars.
But hey, that'd be an interesting title. But the Star Wars Pontifex. It's just like you got to be careful with your words, because what is obviously a joke to some is not to others.
I saw you tweeting about that recently, where you're like, you got to put a disclaimer saying this is not about Star Wars.
Yeah, it's like I was like referencing something completely unrelated, and people are like, oh, what does this mean for Star Wars? It's like, no, this has nothing to do with Star Wars.
And you do go home at the end of the day.
Yes, I do.
And an unannounced film, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we've not announced it, we can't really update you on its status.
Right. And you reminded me yesterday, a Hollywood Reporter article, which I thought was an official announcement, was not an official announcement. I think that's a good lesson for all Star Wars fans to have, because I think we get ahead of ourselves with excitement.
Yeah.
And yesterday you said the perfect thing that gave me goosebumps, and that is, in terms of what's not been announced, there's lots in the works.
Yes, that's right.
And that's all any Star Wars fan should be happy with, because that's super exciting.
Exactly.
Having that.
We've got our plate very much full, and it has to reach a certain point of development where we're able to make an announcement regarding it.
Excellent.
Pablo, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
It's always great.
And thank you so much for coming to FanQuest. You were a big hit. Everyone loved to talk to you, and I hope you had a great time.
I had a great time. I look forward to coming back.
There you go. That's going to do it for this episode of the Star Wars Nerds Podcast. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
I'm Kenton Larson. Don't let the Force hit you in the ass.
That's no move.
Now I am the master.
TK421, you copy? Going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.